All right, so I think we're just going to have open discussion now. So if there is anything that anyone wants to talk about, now's the time, and it can be on lots of different things. We've got several different things that we might possibly talk about. We had some additional questions. We had a request to talk about data privacy. We have a request to talk about how to debias AI and how to ensure that that AI isn't biased, which is a really good question. What else would you like to talk about?
My question, my question is regarding the privacy. In the AI scenario, let's say Google is getting data for each and every person, and even for the US citizen. So, under which law it is covered? That they are making surveillance and intruding into the privacy even for the US citizen. So how they are doing this?
That's a very good question.
That's a great question. That's a great question. Should I answer them all at once, or should I take a cue? Okay. Yeah. That's a good question. I've written it down, and we'll come back to it.
Okay. So we were discussing if you can talk about rule of standardization in
Oh,
AI.
yeah.
Which one?
Rule of standardization.
Standardization, so ISO, NIST, some of the other.
Okay.
I put it down.
Okay. Let me sort of. Okay, in Europe, he made some comment on the Europe. And first, let me explain a couple of things. Then I'll ask him to elaborate. Okay, first of all, it's a European AI Alliance. Can you write it down on this one? European AI Alliance, if you have time, we'll get the homepage, or somebody should get the homepage, okay? And then I want to show you. Go to that website and subscribe. Please do subscribe. Then you get all those information, what's going on in Europe, the meeting, those documentation, including the documentation he just showed, whole sort of things. And you don't have to be a European Union member. Anybody can join. Okay? And then sort of encourage, in your country, when you go in your country, encourage others also to join. Because there's just so many meetings going on in Europe. And many of them you could join remotely too. Okay? By now, for the meeting-wise, European Union is sort of, they try to be a center of the universe. And then why not join? Because Asia Pacific, we are not doing a good job. Then why not just join the Europe? Okay, that's the message. And if somebody try to log into that one and show the website, okay, then which show the document he showed. And one implication, I thought it's kind of strange. Somehow we don't have many those major AI conference. In particular, AI governance conference, almost nothing. Then I thought it's kind of funny because always those governance, Europeans are good at those governance things, and they don't. Then I realized. Because the European Union, through the European those AI Alliance, having so many those meeting and conference. So all those like a Europe, like a UK, or German, French, they just gave up. I mean, you just cannot compete against the European Union because they have a much more those power. So in a sense, that's very good. Because if you have access to the European AI Alliance and become a member, then you can get all those informations. Like, having said that, this is my question to you, and this is the first question. Europe GDPR is, in a sense, it's a remarkable. It's amazing those measure, those accomplishment. So my first question is, they are sort of leading in the world. How does American is sort of cope with, handle this GDPR? Are they against? They are for? Or they try to come up something else? Then the real question is on AI governance, including the principle and the ethics, all those, European, especially this alliance, try to come up something. From the US perspective, do you think European can succeed like a GDPR, or they are just way too late? American will take a lead. Which scenario you think from your perspective looks like as of today? But if I ask the same question 1 year later, you may answer different way, but it's okay. And the Asia, we are in a back seat. We are not in a driving seat, unfortunately. And eventually we should discuss on this one. How can we be in a driving seat? We should, but as of today, no, I can explain that one later. So that's those questions. So compared to the GDPR, that's a beautiful accomplishment, and the Europeans sort of want to repeat, and always like a second time around, there are no chance.
Right.
Okay, can you?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question to start with. The GDPR, and this is a little bit of what I'll get into tomorrow, but maybe this will help me save some time for more discussion tomorrow. But the GDPR really was a remarkable accomplishment. It was 12 years in the making. It is the product of incredible political maneuvering and compromise, and something that was really well thought out. And in the United States, so Kilnam, your question had multiple parts, so I'll try to address all of them. But if I miss some, remind me. But one of the questions was, what do people in the U.S. think about the GDPR, particularly what does industry and government think about the GDPR? And the answer, I think, is that the United States is yet to pass a comprehensive framework for privacy law. So instead, we, in the United States, we toss everything onto our Consumer Protection Agency, which is called the Federal Trade Commission. And the Federal Trade Commission in the United States is largely what we would consider to be our data protection authority. And there are all these proposals now floating around in Congress, and almost always the thing that you hear is we need a U.S. GDPR. We need the United States version of the GDPR. And I am here to tell you it will never happen. And there are several reasons why it will never happen. The first is Congress is busted in so many ways, and they can't agree on anything. And so I don't even think that if the proposal were good, it would pass. But the other reason why, and this is to your second question,
Yes.
it's important to understand that the reason that the GDPR exists is because it is the expression and instantiation of Europe's commitment to both privacy and data protection as a fundamental human right. Articles 8 and 9 of the European Convention. And so starting from the premise that privacy and data protection is a fundamental human right, that provided the political will not only to get the GDPR passed, but also to enforce it. I read today that there was a letter of intent to fine British Airlines, I think, £185 million for a data breach in response to the GDPR. I just read that a few minutes ago. And so the GDPR is this remarkable feat, but the only reason that it works, that it even came into creation, is because there needed to be some kind of vehicle that recognized privacy and separately data protection, which is interesting to think about as a human right. So in other words, we're going to talk about this tomorrow a little bit, but in Europe, privacy and data protection are seen as two different things, which in the United States, they are not. So I'll never forget a conversation I had with a British academic. And I said, what do you study? And she says, I study privacy. So I said, oh, so you must be interested in the GDPR. She was like, no, I study privacy. In the United States, that conversation doesn't make any sense. Okay, so where am I going with this? That leads me to your next question, which is, will there be a GDPR for AI? And the answer, I think, right now is no. And the reason why is because we do not have a corollary, clear expression of a human right that will power that sort of legislative lift. Right? So in other words, in order to get the GDPR, everyone had to be committed to the enterprise of protecting data protection as a human right. There may be some kind of expression that is relevant within the European Charter of Fundamental Human Rights, but as far as I know, and I'm not an expert on European human rights, artificial intelligence doesn't manifest explicitly anywhere in it. As a matter of fact, technical automation almost doesn't. Now there are some things in there, but the result is anything is going to have to be piecemeal. It's going to have to be broken out into small little parts. And so then to your next part, which is Asia is in the back seat when it comes to AI law and policy. I mean, so is the United States. We've really, in the United States, we haven't meaningfully passed any AI governance regulation. We've introduced a bill for algorithmic accountability, and it's a good start, but it's A, probably not going to pass, and B, incomplete, even in its form that it was hopefully proposed in. And I think that this is why I think it's so important to talk about what we want to protect with respect to AI governance and AI regulation. You have to identify a value. And preferably, you have to tether it to a fundamental human right, because that provides the political will and the capital. It provides the judicial cover. It provides the negotiating power to bring people together. It makes sure that industry doesn't get an out when they're developing AI, helping develop AI law and policy, because they are forced to reckon with particular values as human rights. So that's my answer in short. And I can try to answer something else, but I'd rather hear some additional.
This Europe,
I have a simple question on GDPR.
Sure.
Sorry. I have a very simple question on GDPR. Sorry.
Okay, you can ask.
It's a very simple question on GDPR. We have to comply with the rules of the land. For example, my country did not sign the GDPR agreement or treaty, whatever it is, act. But in European Union, it is in place. So some European person has been visiting my country, and he has checked in at a hotel, and hotel official, they asked his personal information, but he refused to provide. Since he's from Europe, he said, I won't give. In that situation, how to manage that person, or what will be the correct action to pacify him or to answer his question?
This is something I think about a lot in terms of the EU basically exporting its version of data protection around the world. And I read a book a few years ago that continues to be profound for me, and I would recommend it to all of you who haven't read it. It's called Who Controls the Internet by Jack Goldsmith and Tim Wu. And it traces the history of the internet and attempts to control the internet. And their conclusion is ultimately that people that control the internet are the people that have the power to either seize property or exercise economic leverage over people. And that's more or less what it comes down to, right? So if you have servers in a country, then that country can say, you have to follow my rules, or otherwise I impound your servers, or I, put your employees in prison, or there's all sorts of things you can do. And if you don't have either of those things, then there's almost nothing you can do. And to try to sort of compromise results in a lot of frustration. I have a lot of frustration, which I'll talk about it in an answer to a different question later, about the fixation with consent that the Europeans seems to have with respect to data protection. They want everyone to get consent, and you click I agree, and we all read the terms, and we click I agree, and it doesn't work very well. And I wish that we could resist that, but it's a model that has been, because a scholar named Anu Bradford wrote an article called The Brussels Effect. Has anyone heard of the Brussels Effect? It's the idea that Europe is able to basically unilaterally impose its will and export it across the entire world, because unless you play by Europe's rules, then they refuse to let you collect information on any of their citizens. And as a result, it has resulted in a proliferation of a lot of rules that look a lot like Europe's rules. And anyone that wants to be seen as adequate in the eyes of the European Union in terms of the GDPR, then you have to basically create a set of rules that looks similar to them. So that's not a very satisfactory answer to your question, but it's one that shows how Europe is basically calling the shots on a lot of privacy and data protection around the world.
I'm Satish, and I have a few observations and questions on the harm that AI can cause, potentially. There has been so many AI fails which have come up, some of them very amusing, some of them not so amusing. You have Microsoft chatbot becoming anti-feminist and pro-Hitler after a few hours. We have Facebook chatbots developing a secret code language between them, and nobody being able to understand them. We have Amazon Alexa sending out confidential conversations within the house, outside. And we have IBM's Watson for Oncology being cancelled after $62 million being spent, and a lot of unsafe medical recommendations. But to me, the most chilling case of corporate, I wouldn't say negligence, but ethical or unethical behavior was Boeing's 737 MAX, which has caused 2 crashes. Now, this is a piece of software that has been inserted to correct a hardware design issue. The MCAS, the Maneuverability Characteristic Augmentation System, which it was actually put in there to make this 737 MAX behave just like a classic 737. But without the pilots being informed exactly what this is going to do. And this has killed so many people. Now, Boeing, as far as I thought, was an ethical company. And this is going to significantly affect them, but they did it nevertheless. Now, what is to stop so many companies in the abuse of AI and automation, especially given that in AI, rules are not expressed in language, but in weights in a neural network. Algorithms are not open source. We cannot see them. We cannot audit them. Experts, therefore, cannot audit these algorithms. The data that is used to drive the AI is proprietary and available only within the company. Harm is often whitewashed and projected as minimal. And regulators may not be able to cope with all the complexity. So how are we going to address these issues? Thank you.
I mean, I feel like we could have a 2-year course on this and still not find the answer to that. I agree with you that there's a lot of differences in the kinds of AI failures, but the Boeing failure is really was profound and chilling. And actually, one of the thinking about Boeing, the education theory of moral responsibility was something that I thought about when I read about Boeing, because you're exactly right. The pilots were not informed of a lot of these issues, and that's what created a lot of problem. In other words, it was a failure of education to talk about syntactic and semantic failures. And it also sort of demonstrated how a lot of the problems that we're dealing with are manifested by other things like economic pressures to cut corners, right? Or to try to retrofit. And so it's also, this is why people that study systems need to be involved in a lot of AI, because and sort of organizational disciplines need to be involved, because a lot of problems that we attribute to AI are spurred on by other concerns and could be prevented if we addressed other concerns that are not relevant to AI. In terms of how do we enforce accountability, I am someone that has been a proponent for some time now in holding companies financially liable. I'm of the opinion that one of the quickest ways to get companies to pay attention is to dramatically affect the bottom line, which is one of the reasons, by the way, that the GDPR has been so powerful, is that it's up to 4% of global turnover, which is for large companies a shocking amount of money. Now, I don't think that data protection authorities are going to levy a 4% fine anytime soon, but even the mere threat of it, what it does, and I've spoken with people that work at large tech companies, they say the GDPR, if it's good at anything, it gives me ammunition, me as a data protection professional within an organization. So you're either the CPO, the CIO, or the CSO. It gives me the ability to walk into the executive's office and say, we need money for this now, because if we don't, and things go bad, we will go out of business, right? In other words, it becomes an existential threat. And only when AI failures become existential threats to companies will, I think, we get real accountability. And so that's probably as good a place to start as any. In the United States, that typically was done not through regulatory action, but through private lawsuits. But that option has been foreclosed significantly over the past number of years. And I've been an advocate of opening it back up for AI systems. But for whatever reason, in the United States, they've been very reluctant to attribute financial liability for software errors. So if you make a defective product, a physical product that breaks and harms someone, you can be sued for hundreds of millions of dollars. But for some reason, the same sorts of failures within software aren't treated quite the same. And actually, Kilnam just wrote down a book, Bruce Schneier's, was it To Kill Everybody, Click Here? Was that the book? Yeah, Kill Here to Click Everybody. I just finished reading this book as well. It's a very, very good book. You really should. And one of the best things about the book is he diagnoses a lot of problems, but he also proposes regulatory solutions. And so the book is chock full of, and you may agree with him, you may not, but it's a really, at least he gives concrete possible solutions to, and he's talking about the IoT, but IoT is wound together tight, I think, with AI and data protection as well. So.
Yeah, this is the book, okay? Bruce Schneider. It's a very good book, and you should read. And Satish and the others. If you want to know my example, the serious example, the one you said is almost, to me, almost nothing. But the one who could be extremely serious, yeah, he lists them all. Pretty much he lists them all. He has been working in this security area for so many years at the leading in a position, and he also teaches at this security course at the Harvard, the Kennedy School. So that he knows how to put the things together. So definitely read it. And then another reason is this is probably the first book who went beyond the internet. As he said, he covers AI and IoT. So he's really talking in the context of digital governance. So it's just so perfect. Okay, and you can see some very gloomy case, unfortunately. Okay, having said that, on what you said, we have a technical term, explainability. Okay, whoever makes those AI product has a sort of a responsibility on explainability. But in reality, this is a sort of still in the research phase, technically. So the very fundamental issue is can we explain? Like, okay, I made a software, AI software. And this AI software did this and that. Can I explain? I'm 100% cooperate with you. Can I explain? Unfortunately, in the case of AI software, not necessarily. Because they sort of algorithm is in such a way, it decides on its own. There's also, the randomness is also included. So even like the software author doesn't know, how come this AI decided this way? That's the reality of AI. So the explainability, yes, many people are working on, but it's very difficult. And that's one of the major topic on AI governance. So it is also algorithmic transparency. We are sort of try to enforce, but is it effective? Okay, I'll show, I made a software. Okay, I'll show all those algorithms. Does it really help to resolve whatever those issues which may come up? Not necessarily. Again, this is a research phase. People are working hard, but we just don't know how we can give you what you want. Then having said that, let me be cold-blooded. I don't worry about Boeing. It could be really bad because this is a software problem, okay? By having those two incidents, Boeing probably stock, the market valuation, probably they lost easily $5, $10, $20 billion. So how much they are going to lose before they correct? They will. Otherwise, they'll go bankrupt eventually. So fortunately, we have those feedback mechanism. By losing those huge amount of money, then but still you say like, killing a couple hundred people, still you can talk about those money. But unfortunately, AI is our software is such a those impact. So before they correct, they may have to have so many people get killed. That seems to be things to come. That's from the technical person. I don't guarantee you, but I can forecast. Unfortunately, just one or two or three won't do it. Several hundred, a multi-billion dollars loss. Then they take a notice. That seems to be things is coming in this decade or next. Okay, that's standard.
Standards.
Somebody said a standard.
Oh yeah, what is the role of international standards? I think Anupam and I were talking about that.
This is Iqbal. AI is called fourth industrial revolution. How correct is it? First, just in some countries they're calling it fourth industrial revolution. First one is the invention of steam engine, then electricity, then computer, right? Fourth one is AI. So how correct the saying is?
I think he's asking, I mean, is it true that AI is the fourth industrial revolution? Do you think that?
No chance.
That's which one was it? World Economic Forum, they want to praise. But in say a couple of years, probably they'll talk in a different way.
But from the
It's a far more.
Okay.
Like somebody said, actually I also wrote an article once or twice. Somebody said like, how fundamental, what's the sort of level of those, the revolution AI is offering? There's like in the past we had the agricultural revolution, then the industrial revolution, then probably this AI revolution. And the impact of AI revolution is probably far more than the industrial revolution. Not the third or fourth or fifth. And then compared to the agricultural revolution, probably AI revolution has a more impact.
They are
So the,
combining AI into agriculture.
Oh, no, far more. So you may consider AI is the major revolution.
Okay.
Beyond the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution.
Just to repeat, the way they are saying, this first one was the invention of steam engine.
Oh, not much.
And then the second one is invention of electricity, power. And then third one is they're saying the uses of computer, invention of computer. And fourth, sequentially they're telling that AI would be the fourth industrial revolution. So how correct the statement is? My question is that can we accept it from the expert?
That's the typical talk people gave about 5 to 10 years ago. But people wouldn't say that way anymore. And it's not that, probably more, but it's not that important. Actually, important thing is we know the narrow AI. Are we going to accomplish the general AI? Then its impact is far more. Okay, but if you fail to have a general AI, then we may just compromise as a fourth industrial revolution. But it seems we are heading far more. But because it affects every aspect of our life. Is there any revolution in the past, agriculture or industrial revolution, affecting every aspect of our life? Probably not. So the conclusion is that AI revolution is a very fundamental revolution. And probably you can just stop there. You don't have to compare.
We can call it their personal statement.
No, many people say. And who was it? Like the World Economic Forum. They're the first one. They say like a fourth, and the second, third, and the fourth revolution. And they changed those definitions several times. And the latest version, they include the AI. But that's a commercial organization. So who do you care about the commercial organization? Moreover, the thing I don't give high value on West Economic Forum is if it's that serious, okay, they should write a book. The book which can last like 100 years. They never wrote any serious book at all because it's a commercial organization. Okay, as long as they can attract those the rich people, then they are happy. So probably you may just stop there. It's not that important.
Thank
just
you.
as like, AI revolution is very fundamental.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I'm Santosh. So earlier we discussed that there is no possibility of having a kind of a US version of GDPR because there is no political commitment. At the same time, there is lack of values as a privacy and data protection as a human rights in US. So I was thinking, because in the US there is so much value given to the freedom of speech and expression and opinion. So how can we relate artificial intelligence with the freedom of speech, and whether it can be a form of protected speech, or it is part of the copyright, or this is a new area which we can discuss whether this is a speech or not, whether it is expression or not, these algorithms. So if we find the value in algorithm or AI as a freedom of speech, there would be protection, or what would be the future discourse in the coming days to regulate AI within these various boxes of human rights?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll instead of being able to answer it because I can't answer it, let me point you to watch several things, several debates happening right now in the United States. So the Supreme Court of the United States right now is very strongly protective of the First Amendment. And I think it was California just passed a bot disclosure law. Has anyone heard of this? It's brand new. So one of the big problems that lawmakers began to worry about was that people wouldn't know that they were talking to a software bot, a chat bot. And that's problematic. So for example, if you're on Twitter and you get into a Twitter fight with someone, you say, I think that, this is great, and the Twitter bot says, you're wrong, it's not great, and you're dumb. And then you get into a fight with them. You should know that you're fighting with a robot. And so they passed this rule that said that bots have to be basically labeled as such. They have to declare that they are bots. And it's a mandatory disclosure law. And it is something that I anticipate is going to be met with some significant First Amendment challenges and could very well be struck down by the United States Supreme Court as a violation of the First Amendment. Because it is a compelled speech case. And AI certainly has many different free speech ramifications to it, that being one of them. If you're interested in that, there's an article written by a friend of mine and a student of his, Ryan Kalo and Madeline Lameau, talking about the potential unconstitutionality of artificial intelligence. But this is also going to creep into lots of different areas, because if you think about it, to further Kilnam's point, AI is going to be fundamental to many different practices that we consider to be core freedom of speech issues. One of which is the giving of medical advice, right? So there are licensing issues embedded with artificial intelligence. If someone passes a rule that says that IBM's Watson is not allowed to give medical diagnoses, what are the free speech implications of that? What about fake news as an example, here's one. Has anyone here heard of the term deep fakes? Do you know what a deep fake is? A few people have heard. So for those that aren't familiar, a deep fake is a video that has been altered using a sort of AI-enhanced piece of software that makes it very difficult to distinguish the fake video that you've created from the real video. And the fake video can have the person in the video saying anything. So there are clips on the internet of Donald Trump reading Barack Obama's speeches as a deep fake, right? And it becomes very difficult to tell the difference. And in the United States, the creation of deepfake is a speech act, right? So if I want to create a political satire video of a politician that I don't like saying something that I wish he or she would say, that's a speech act and is presumptively protected by the Constitution unless it's deceptive or something else along those lines. But even then, it has some sort of protection. And so there are all these things that AI is getting into. It's worth thinking about how AI can be used to help create a speech act and how it can be a tool for freedom of expression purposes.
At times I get this Black Mirror vibe all the way.
Right, yeah. Yeah, Black Mirror, it was not supposed to be an instruction manual, right? But it ends up feeling that way sometimes.
Satish again, on deepfake, on Reddit, the subreddit deepfake was banned because they were all about porn. And it is far worse than the Trump situation. It is really bad. But my question is relating to the legal rights of an AI agent. An AI agent, is it a person? Does it have, like GDPR, we had a huge discussion on the what is that? I forget the terms, but the individual or the corporate entity, that kind of a thing. But in AI, when you have an agent that is autonomous and take decisions, like for example, driving a car, is that considered to be a persona? What are the legal rights or obligations of that persona? Who is responsible for that persona misbehaving? Thank you.
So are you saying that if Apple were to create an autonomous car and it were powered by Siri, should we recognize Siri as a with legal personhood, for example?
If not, who is the legal entity that is responsible?
Right.
For every instance of the car.
Yeah. So this is really great. There's a section in the EU high-level report on this where they caution very strongly against recognizing legal personhood for autonomous agents. There's a paper by some colleagues of mine and co-authors, Neil Richards and William Smart, that was presented. It was the very first paper presented at the very first We Robot conference called How Should We Think About Robots and Autonomous Agents? And they caution very strongly against falling into what is known as the android, they call it the android fallacy, which is the idea that just because something moves like a human and acts like a human, we should treat it as though it is human. I too strongly caution against this. One of the things that psychological research has shown, and a lot of researchers working in human-computer interaction, I'm thinking specifically of Kate Darling at MIT, but other people have done this as well, have looked into ways in which humans react to anthropomorphized software or robots.
Empathy.
And we can't help it. We are trained when we see
There was a case of a robot being kicked.
Right,
and
exactly.
down.
Yes, right. We're trained when a robot gets kicked, we feel empathy for the robot. And that can actually be leveraged by companies to manipulate us. The example that I give is I have a robot vacuum cleaner at home. It's a Roomba. And my family gave it a nickname because it sort of scoots around and bumps into things and goes somewhere else, and we call it Rocco the Roomba. And imagine if Rocco were outfitted with a chatbot, a personality, or given a personality. We could talk with it. We would come home from work in the afternoons and we would say, "Hello, Rocco, how was your day?" And Rocco makes a joke. And Rocco says, "My job sucks, ha 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 ha," and then we all laugh. And then all of a sudden, Rocco one day comes like limping up, and Rocco has eyes now, right? And he looks up at me. I say he, it's an it, right? But it's a he. And he looks up at me and he says, "Father, if you don't buy me an upgrade, I'll die." Right? And all of a sudden we feel terrible. We say, "Oh, Rocco, you can't die. I will pay for that upgrade. Here's $200 to Amazon or Apple or whoever owns it." And that, of course, is manipulation. And one of the questions that we have to ask about robots and artificial intelligence is, how do we treat that manipulation? I would argue that it would be an abusive trade practice, but in the very least, the thing that we shouldn't do is bestow personhood upon that, because then that absolves the maker of that product from moral responsibility for it. And so who should be responsible is the person that made it. So behind every single piece of AI And it's important not to mythicize AI. Behind every single piece of AI is a coder and a company and a data set, right? We can trace those things. Now, maybe sometimes they act in unpredictable ways, and there are parts of the law that can accommodate that. But it's not as though technology sort of existed, independently of humans.
So I suppose my only comment would be that I agree with that position. But if you take the comparable example of a computer virus, it's produced by a person, but we are actually approaching the time when a virus can produce another virus, which can produce another virus. So the causality link, I don't know how much you can push it. So when that happens in AI, machines that make themselves.
Right. Well, and this is really hard. And then that's a very good point. And then a related aspect to that is open robotics, where you have a platform that hosts other kinds of AI, and it's difficult to hold any one actor attributable. I mean, the idea would be you would hold the platform attributable, but they're a general platform, and so it's hard to attribute causality to them.
Okay, just received a remote question from Shah Rahman. The question is, in Asia, many countries like Japan, China have excellent on AI, like healthcare and other applications too. So, how we can encourage in Asia Pacific to make inclusive involvement in AI governance, like European Union governments. In Asia, to taking leadership in AI governments, like European Union. And Asia have less concerned AI diplomacy. And how could we address this issue, actually? Thank you.
That's a tough question. Conclusion, join Europe. The reason is, yes, Europe they are doing. Then for each country or each sub-region in Asia, would you wait something, Asia will have something equivalent to the Europe? And so the weight, that may take, say like 5, 10, 20, 50 years. Would you like to wait? Better join the European activity, then in parallel, try to sort of develop our own. For example, me, personally, I am working on to have say like an Asian AI governance forum. Do you know how difficult it is? First, I had to get China, Japan, Korea to get together, because they spend a huge amount of money, so they should be a member. That's ridiculously difficult. Okay, and once you make this alliance between those three countries, sort of rotating those AI governance conference, so each country organizes every 3 years. It's tough, and we just don't have people. And if we have people, they rather want to spend their time joining those American effort or European effort. So even if we succeed, it's very likely we'll have a second class. And still I believe like we should. But you as an individual country, first you have to sort of set up your country. Okay? Then as a European Union, just join, as I said here. Then you can start. Because first you have to do those capacity development. You have to have those experts. Okay, then you can move to the next step. And which, in the case of AI, extremely tough. And I don't have any, we don't give any guarantee, okay? Within XX years, we'll do it. No chance we can give a guarantee. When I go to China next time, in this fall, I go twice. Yes, I talk to them. Okay, and probably they will be happy to collaborate. Then I meet the Japanese. Yes, I do. I do. Then Korea. Yes, I do. But how long does it take? It's kind of a very slow movement because we don't have those European Union, some binding organization. Then unfortunately, APEC or ASEAN cannot do that role. Cannot play that role. So it's tough. And for each country, don't wait. If the UAE is doing, just join it. If European is doing, join it. If join a couple of them, then you start developing a critical mass in your country. That's the first one, first job to do. Did I answer your question? Whoever asked this question remotely. Oh, yes, would you like?
Actually, I want to know one observation from you. You have any comments? Yes, comments or observation, like you have any idea about the fake news or fake information detection system through AI?
Yeah, it's not going to work anytime soon. And the reason, of course, is that truth is socially constructed. And it's the same reason that social media have had difficulty automating other sorts of content takedowns. So even nudity, something as simple as nudity, has been really difficult to automate as a matter of AI. It's very difficult to determine real violence in a video from movie violence, right? That's something that we intuitively often know when we watch a movie versus when someone is actually being shot versus when someone is being shot with studio makeup. But AI has a very difficult time with contextual clues and background information. And so this is someone, I say with the disclaimer, I haven't looked into this myself. I try to listen to people that study this for a living. And what they tell me is that we are not close in terms of automated fake news takedowns. I think that there's been some wide-scale experimentation, but it's my understanding that it hasn't gone too well. As a matter of fact, if you turn the filter too high just by a small smidge, then everything in the New York Times gets labeled as fake news or something along those lines. And if you turn it down, a tick lower than that, then nothing gets tagged, right? And so it becomes an incredibly difficult thing to do because what is fake and what is not under this definition is so highly contextual, and it is not the kind of task that narrow AI, which is what is being used right now, is really capable of solving. You might as well just be better off just trying to do some sort of hash or something than AI. I don't know. This is just for what I understand.
Can you explain my question regarding the Google?
Could you say the question again?
Yeah, actually, regarding the privacy in artificial intelligence, so Google is already intruding into the privacy of all over the world, including the US citizen. Apple is doing the same. So is there any law supporting them to do in US or not?
This is great. I love the way that you phrased the question in that you said that Google and Apple are already violating people's privacy and collecting information. That's certainly the perception of many in the United States, but Google and Apple would probably contest that they're doing that. So this gets back to one of the really key debates. One of the interesting things I find about AI, and to the point about whether it's the next revolution and the label, it's always changing. We didn't even call it AI 6 years ago. The debate that we're having now was the big data debate, right? And we called it big data. Now almost nobody uses that term anymore. It's all just AI, and the question as to this gets at a fundamental fissure or divide among privacy scholars and regulators, and that's and we're going to talk a lot about this more tomorrow. So I'll plug my talk tomorrow as part of my answer today, which is it depends on what you mean by privacy and what we mean by data protection, because there are many that say that true privacy only exists when the data is not collected. So it's about collection versus use limits. And in all the big data talk that came out about 5 or 6 years ago, the push was, well, we should let everyone collect everything and we'll just be responsible with it. And there's a version of privacy that allows that. But it's you have to temper it sort of with reality. And then the final answer, I think, to your question, which is how is Google and Apple doing this right now, has to do with the default state of data protection laws around the world, most notably in the United States. So the major distinction, and we'll talk about this a little tomorrow, the major distinction between the United States and Europe in terms of data protection is the default state of automated processing. In the EU, it is presumptively illegitimate to collect and process personal data. In the United States, it is presumptively allowed unless it's explicitly prohibited. And what that means is that you're able to do a lot more in the United States in collecting and processing personal information because basically Google and Apple are waiting for a regulator to tell them that they can't. And there's not much political will. Meanwhile, in the European Union, the default is you can't collect it and you have to prove to us that there's a reason why you can. Now, that gets problematic as well because there are ways in which you can legitimize data collection that I don't think necessarily protect privacy interests, but that's a different debate that we can talk about tomorrow.
Okay, let's wait until he give a lecture tomorrow on the privacy. Then probably you can get a more orderly those knowledge transfer. Then you can rephrase your question. That may be a better way. And before I start this topic, let me clarify on the so-called fourth industrial revolution. Long time ago, about 10 years ago, we said this way: how significant is the internet, invention of internet? How significant is the invention of a computer? Then we said we could compare internet, computer, and the Gutenberg printing press. Then this is an economist in a UK journal. Their conclusion was internet impact is bigger than a computer, but not as much as a Gutenberg's printing press. That's my quotation. Okay, do similarly on AI. Then I just go all the way. I don't even compare the agricultural revolution. It's not much. Invention of language. Usually we say how do we distinguish between human being and other animals? The language, the way we handle language, even the animal has some language, but it's totally different level, right? That's the sort of invention of language and the invention of those AI is something you may compare. It's very fundamental to the human being. Then these days, when I give a lecture, I tend to use the AI native. Like a long time ago, we said a native language, and probably like a bilingual, and similarly, AI native may be very important to the K-12. Think about it. That's the sort of, seems much more fundamental than industrial revolution, I guess.
The thing is that
can I go to this topic, or you want to talk to that one?
Just
This is a AI governance workshop.
Just 10 seconds more. Their logic is that they are implementing AI in many sectors right now, in agriculture, in traffic control management, and urban and rural areas, in many sectors. So in industrial area, it is being used right now. So there will be huge impact, huge transformation on human life and everything. That's why they are calling it a revolution.
I guess. Okay, let me just give, since I made this one, let me show you. If you don't like it, just cut me out. This is this is still dropped. Okay, so the content is not stable yet. But this may help you to understand from the internet governance perspective on AI governance. So my argument comes from can we learn from the internet governance to develop the AI governance? In order to develop a good AI ecosystem, ultimate goal is not AI governance. That's a means to accomplish the AI ecosystem, which is very important, and you need a quite elaborate effort, and then you should start. Start earlier is easier, similar to the internet ecosystem. Okay, and this is table of content. And first of all, what's the similarity and the difference between the internet governance and the AI governance? Okay, similarity, both of them start from the academic leadership back in 60, 70 years ago. Okay, and in the case of internet governance, the history I'll give you Wednesday. So the wait until history of internet governance until Wednesday, 9 o'clock. Okay, and both of them has an open process on a source, documentation, discussion. This is a typical of those academic in the USA back in 50s and the 60s. So both have a common those heritage. And then eventually commercial sector took over later, not from the beginning. Up to this point, they are similar. Okay. Difference is in the case of internet, interoperability is extremely important. Actually, any telecommunication system, network system, interoperability is a must. It's the highest priority. If it doesn't interoperate, it's useless, obviously. And we don't have that one in AI. As long as your product is powerful enough, either Siri or the Alexa or whatever, then you can be a product. Okay, they don't care so much about the interoperability. And next one is AI governance require the technical development, which will be substantial, far more than the internet, and it will be a long term. We started those research development also sort of together back in seriously back in about the 60s. But AI still you need to say like 40, 50 more years. Internet basically finished their technical development. Okay, so when you go to internet governance, you don't see many technical people anymore. AI, half of them is technical people, academic, or more. Then standardization is totally different. Internet, we are very fortunate. We did a standardization without the commercial interest back in the 70s. And so the commercial, they didn't have any choice. They had to follow us. And still basically we are doing that way at the IETF. Okay, but of course, like if you go beyond the internet, like IoT, no. We academic, we lost. Industry took over. Industry is doing a standardization. Okay, now in the case of AI, standard. No, I haven't. Of course, there's a standardization organization working on AI, but it's just very little. And does it have any impact? Probably none, other than the informational. Probably they cannot come up with a prescriptive those standard in the case of AI. Of course, they are working hard, but it will be more information. Information means they just describe, this is what it is. They don't prescribe. Okay? And of course, like, which one is it? Autonomous driving, there will be the industry consortium to have a certain interoperability, but that's some very specialized area. So if you're talking about conclusion, AI in general, probably you may not have standardization, unlike the internet. But a specific area of the AI, like autonomous driving, yes, they will have those industry consortium standard, just like IoT. Okay, because that help them to do the business. So it's kind of a different kind of standardization. And the principles, again, it's very different. Domain name-based internet governance principle, we have a fairly stable one. And then we revise at the Net Mundial. And the people don't talk anymore. Means it's so stable. AI, the principles is somehow totally different. Seems we have to have a evolution in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and which may not be so much of a binding. We'll see. It doesn't make sense to give a definite conclusion today. Probably 10 years later, we may be able to. Meantime, you just take a look at several of those principles. Start from the ASIROMA, then go to the European, then go to the OECD. It's sort of, they're somewhat similar, but not like those Net Mundial for the internet. The complexity of AI governance, this is the one we have to realize. Internet governance is very simple. Especially domain-named internet governance is almost trivially simple. Okay, and almost no technical issue anymore. But AI governance, no. First of all, AI problems is still under development. Probably next 50 years, easily. Then what does it mean by the governance? You have to have technical people. Then how can we communicate with a person who is writing those research paper, he may get the Nobel Prize, and those policy maker and the industry? It's not easy to communicate. Okay, and then AI governance is extremely interdisciplinary. Almost every academic discipline. So everybody in the university department are involved in AI. I'll give you the example, like my university, we have about 500, about 700, 800 those professors. Okay, and about 30% they are involved in AI. That's sort of a typical. And so that you can say like every department in the university involved in AI. And then how do we do it? And then to make it even worse, AI governance is addressing a fundamental issue on humanity and society. Because AI may have so much impact on the human rights. Then who is going to do in this area? Human rights those organization or those AI community? It's that difficult. And the next AI economy, unfortunately, is far bigger than the internet economy. Means commercial interests tend to dictate. Ask any commercial, okay? $15 trillion per year. Would you like to be interested? Okay, compared to the internet industry, probably order of magnitude different. Is the issue. Then remark aspect of AI on the internet. Okay, for example, when you talk about society, both AI and the internet are involved. And that's the area sort of we can get involved. But ethics, almost nothing in the internet. It's like, but AI is a very big issue. Very big issue is one over two or three major issues. And then who is going to deal with the ethics? It's all over in social science to the humanity, right? History, philosophy, education, psychology, you just name it, they're all involved in ethics. And technology, again, AI, it's the major. Internet, not anymore. Of course, we have some little area, but it's very minor. So this makes AI governance extremely complex. And then those both internet development and the AI development, they started in sort of mid-20s. And as I said, both of them start from the academic community. And one of the reasons is, especially in the USA, is NSF decided to fund both. And so initially sort of they could sort of get a momentum to develop. And in the case of internet governance development, of course, this one I would explain Wednesday. They start serious one. They started in the 1990s. GTLD. We had those GTLD.com and .org and such back in early 80s. Then we didn't do anything. Then all of a sudden, in the mid-90s, those commercial sector, they sort of interested in having their own GTLD. Then with whole those argument started. And so the conclusion is actually the internet governance really started in the 1970s, depending on how we define the internet governance. Then it's take a very serious turn in the 90s. Until then, it's sort of a background. And but the 90s become a major issue. Because there was almost a fight. I just couldn't believe it. And I explained how did it happen in the 90s and Wednesday. Then the interesting thing is, as of today, major internet company equals the major AI company. both in the USA and China, except one exception in a Chinese company. But otherwise, over 90-some%, it's the same company. And this sort of make things very interesting and complicated. So I said like we should start from the internet AI. This intersection of internet company and the AI companies. Maybe a good way to start. And the issue, I just list them all. And if you're interested, just let me know. Like a multi-stakeholderism, in AI, we don't even talk. Okay? Even like a security area, we don't talk the multi-stakeholderism. Then is multi-stakeholderism is unique to the domain name internet governance, or is it something more? If you're interested, read a book, Minu Hemit. She wrote a remarkable book in early 2000 on this multi-stakeholderism. And I give a multi-stakeholderism in many sectors. And the internet is just one of them. Global warming seems to be one of the most successful area on multi-stakeholderism, and many more. And what else? What else? Okay, you just read. It doesn't make sense to explain. I can elaborate in each one of them, but probably not today. The reference, just which one is a good one to read on those? Actually, there is no article comparing internet governance and AI governance. So you have to sort of read both, and you have to sort of compose in your brain. And okay, any question on this one? Or shall I move to the next topic, whatever we have?
Actually, we receive a question again, and my question also like that. This question from Shah Jaidur Rahman. The AI, we are actually talking about AI governance, all about the issue with the AI, but it will also create some problem too. As I think, as we had a presentation or like chatbot, definitely we can also replace with some like a call center. I know that so many guys are actually related to working with these types of job. Actually, it's AI actually take this position, so it will impact on our society economy too. So this is the question. Thank you.
What's the question?
So actually AI, if take any position that make impact on our labor that we are used to work with that, so what will happen? Is there any solution with that, with this disadvantage?
Is the question whether, I guess, what the solution should be about the displacements of human-powered assistance, as opposed to which can be automated? I mean, there will undoubtedly be certain sorts of jobs that are impacted. I don't know about replaced. I mean, a lot of the people that really actually study this say that it's unlikely to see entire categories of jobs completely eliminated. Rather, what likely is that they will change. The number of the jobs will change. The nature of the job will change because AI will be used as a tool to aid. I'm not the right person to answer this question, but I do think that the high-level experts report from the EU has some really interesting proposals about reskilling and upskilling and focusing on doing things like critical problem solving, which is a lot of what human-centered support does. That's really hard to teach narrow AI. And to the extent that we're still a long way away from general AI, I think those will still be around for a long time. I mean, things that are easily automated might actually make human-powered support systems better because you can offload the stuff that narrow AI can handle, which then actually frees up resources to more meaningfully engage on critical problem-solving challenges.
Anything? We have 15 minutes to go.
My question is a bit similar to his question, and in my country concept and South Asia or Asia Pacific, and this is very related to that what he raised, the workforce, right? I think most of you are aware of that Amazon Go stores. Do you know about it? The Amazon Go, there's a new stores in Amazon. No humans are there. Yeah. Then anybody can enter that shops and you can purchase anything with your mobile phone. Then nobody there, no persons there, no humans there. But in my country or in this region, we recruited more than 100 people in this kind of stores, right? Then in implementation stage, this might be a big problem in this region, I think, right? And other thing is then, I'm not expecting the answer from you then because you answered to him then. The other thing is that I saw another video that it's about the Sophia, that first AI robot. Yeah, there's a lot of videos available on YouTube. The latest one is the Sophia, Will Smith, he's trying to dating with Sophia, right? But I think they are also then you all know who is the Will Smith, and then Sophia appeared in many TV shows. In every shows, the whole audience laugh on her. Then I don't think that we are talking about the Asian context, but in the Europe or in the US, and there also, still people not accepting, in personal level, they are not accepting in some level that AI technology or something. Then I think there's a huge gap and barriers in social economic stage. That's it.
I mean, I think your concerns are valid, and I don't have much to add, although to think about the Amazon stores where you walk in and sort of grab anything and you don't. I mean, the thing that scares me about the Amazon store that the EU high-level task force talked about is you are sort of relentlessly tracked from the moment you walk in, right? It uses facial recognition technology to identify you. It's not, I mean, I think that the dream is not even to use your mobile phone. You just walk in and you grab a bag of chips and you walk out and you're debited, however much the chips cost. And to an extent, we already have that already, and it's called a vending machine, but without all the surveillance. And so I worry that we're not only eliminating labor but adding surveillance to go with it for maybe relatively minimal gain, except for efficiency gains because companies are able to not have to pay employees.
I think it's a very silly question, but it's question to Professor Chon. Multi-stakeholderism is a big buzzword in these times. So, what is the exactly multi-stakeholderism is for these IG issues? What if how many people, how many diversification was there? Then we called it multi-stakeholderism. Number one. Number two. What is the role of this multi-stakeholderism? Is international organization like ITU, World Intellectual Property Organization, this kind of organization, what is the role of them in this multi-stakeholderism?
Okay, that's a Wednesday. First, there's a 2TP, Internet Governance History. You just go to our this week's program. On the Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock, there's a 2TP, one of the Internet Governance history. Then the second one is a multi-stakeholderism history. Read that one. Then if you have a question, yes, please ask me. Okay, because it'll be better if I explain on those, especially in a historical perspective. Why this happened this way? It's something like I know because I involved from the very beginning. Okay, from 1970s, but most of you didn't. So that I'll explain those why this happened this way. And so some of them is coincidental. It just happened that way. Like a friend, John Postel, he insists. So it's just, that's what we are doing today, for example. And some of them, we had a fight, big fight. And we reached the conclusion. And possibly that one, then I'll explain what it is, then ask me a question. Then we can go much more specific. Okay? And the PowerPoint is right there. Yes, please.
Yeah, today we will talk about the AI governance, but we just talk about the how to govern the AI. But my question is about AI, how AI influence the government, the governance. Yeah.
You mean government?
The governance. Yeah, my question is about because when the internet come, you think the power has become from the hierarchy and like a pyramid to a horizon power. No, my question about when the AI become more influential, how the form of power will become more horizon or just become another pyramid, just
it's
like
a political science question.
yeah, okay.
You are closer than me.
I mean, I'm not a political scientist nor a philosopher, but I do think that the question of how AI will ultimately come to shape laws and not AI governance necessarily, which is not how I interpreted your question, but rather all laws. So an example would be if AI becomes widely implemented and used across the world, would it be possible to have dynamic speed limits, for example? Right. So on the road, the speed limit might change according to how many cars are on the road and how fast everyone is going. And if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there are 4 cars on the road, then maybe the speed limit is really high. And if it's very busy, then maybe the speed limit lowers. And AI could do that. And there's no reason that it couldn't, other than we've never had the capability to do it before. And so it's possible that AI could profoundly affect regulatory models. We've been talking all day about how regulatory models should affect AI, but it is worth thinking about the other way around. And the only other part of that I really caution, and the thing that I will tell you scares me a lot, is the ability for AI to be utilized to perfectly enforce the law. I think that would be a massive mistake. We write laws with the idea that they wouldn't be perfectly enforced. And when we sort of relentlessly enforce them, and AI can be used to do that, I think we get to really harsh ends to a place that we might not be happy with.
Me, Romkant Pandey from Nepal. My, not a question, this is a query only. Curiosity can only create my mind, just one curiosity. Most of the artificial intelligence related algorithm is the open. Anyone develop, anyone produce, anyone integrate these systems. But the problem is there, like Alibaba, like Google, like Microsoft invest millions of dollars to produce and research the different product and services. Is there any practices to share this knowledge to the other countries, other companies, using different type of technology management principle like acquisition, like patents? Is there this type of practices available to share, acquire, or sell, or copyright? That type of practices apply use of this artificial intelligence tool to other companies.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know enough to be able to answer that question, and I'm sorry. I'm just unfamiliar with the procurement and IP background to be able to answer that question. I'm sorry. I could venture a guess, but it would just be guessing.
My question is not technical question. I am asking only is there any practices to just Alexa develop the one type of logics? Alexa sell the copyrights or provide the patent or any other type of services to the other companies, and they use these systems. Like my question is, my curiosity is, big giant company research and develop the different type of artificial intelligence related tools. And the small company or developing countries, it's not possible to invest or research in this sector in the area. Is there any practices in the European or Asian or any other countries to sharing or especially technology transfer to these other countries and other companies?
That was answer could be very complex. The first, we have an open software. Okay, in many areas, this is a tradition we have since 1950s. Open software, which you could use it, something just as good as anything, the best commercial product. And the next one up is those industry working on a specific technology in order to sell. And so you have to have if you're in a company, you have to be very good. Either make your own or buy those software or the combination. That's very critical. And do you know who is doing the best those buy and make this decision? Google. It's remarkable. And so the first class company, second company in this AI area is simple. Can you make a good decision? Buy and make. Then you are first class. And if you can't, you cannot be a second or first class. So it's for many companies in the developing countries, it's very tough. How can you have such a specialist? Right? Even in Korea, we are struggling, spending a huge amount of money, and we are not doing as good as some of those American companies. Did I answer to some of your questions? Yes, Sparky, you wake up.
I was awake. So this is a question to Professor Chon. Obviously, you've seen the development of internet since almost the beginning. When I look back the history of internet, let's say 30 years ago, when people talk about internet, they were full of optimism. this new technology will bring better democracy, will let people know, will help people access to information, that will lead us, that will give us better, I don't know, better world, make people rich, and everything else. Now, after 30 years, when we discuss AI, of course we have excitement. However, I also feel people worrying about, or I also feel some fear. What if this new technology will lead us to wrong place? So, yeah, I'm very curious how you see, is it different? Is it the same? Or my understanding is inaccurate. But still, I feel like some difference between the discussion of people's perception in the beginning of two technologies.
Let me comment. I don't answer directly, but let me comment indirectly. Automobile, when it came up, just like internet. So it's amazing technology. We really like it. Then what happened today? Do you know how many people killed in because of automobile? Million per year. Much more than a war are killed. Then this air pollution, including global warming. And automobile is one of those causes. Compared to the automobile, internet, are we doing as bad job? Then what about the AI? Let's give another example. Train, like he said, train is the first of the industrial revolution. So let's start with train. When train came up first time, they thought it was so impressive. And so we call the industrial revolution. Then, do you know what happened? They explode every once in a while. So if you go to those home of the industrial revolution, go to the London, UK, or the France, they don't allow to have a railroad station next to the Buckingham Palace, because they may explode at any time. So if you look at London, there's a train station in the outside. So is Paris. It was that bad. But today, first of all, Japanese are so brave. They decided to have a train station next to the emperor's house, castle, in the Tokyo station. It's a walking distance. And since then, yes, we corrected those problems. So now people don't worry having a train station next to the most important place, because people don't worry about the explosion. So we solve it. So can we solve those internet problem, AI problem similarly? Yeah, we have to work hard. And 50 years from now, 100 years from now, we know the answer. But not today. This is the sort of indirect comment. It's over.